You know, today we live in a time where people would prefer to live as victims, prefer to use the label "I'm vulnerable." Therefore, it gives me the right to act the way I do because this is the reason why, and therefore I'm not responsible for my actions because it's something beyond my control. Look, I get it that for some people, particularly who have been a victim of a form of abuse, be that historic or be that more present, you know, it's the hardest thing to get over and get through and to acknowledge, particularly when you're not believed, particularly when you are sided against, or particularly when people say you're lying. It is difficult. And I say that because I've been there many times myself. But it's also important to understand that when you go through this, my advice, my admonition, my encouragement is get help, get support. Seek therapeutic support. Build a supportive network around you of people who will stand with you, who will journey with you, who will care for you, will help you to make sense of things, but equally will help you to begin to walk in freedom and victory once more, and maybe find a new strength and a new way of being, not only for yourself but others, to stand against what is wrong with the world in which you live. So I want to say, if you are struggling, get help. And I speak as somebody that has been bullied recently, which has caused me to walk out of my job, was not believed by HR. And you know, and then it's having to deal with that. It's not the first time that I've dealt with this, and a lot of it is to do with a spiritual side of evil that is on the individuals. But I have actually learned to process it and work with God with it. And I've gone through childhood abuse as well as being autistic, dyspraxic and potentially ADHD. So there's a lot of things where I could walk and say I'm a victim, I'm vulnerable, but I've chosen not to. I've chosen to get help. I've chosen to do my own research, to look at things that can help, to help me kind of heal my mind. You know, in my recent job, walking out, taking the sick leave that I was entitled to. I know that's not possible for everybody, but if you can't get sick leave because of the way contracts are set, then maybe it is time to move on from the job, you know, to look at other options. But either which way, there are ways to help you move through it. But on the other side, if you are using your victimhood or your vulnerability as an excuse so you don't have to be accountable for the actions and say, well, I did that because I'm ADHD, I'm autistic or whatever, I'm impulsive. And yes, there is a thing with that you can be impulsive. However, if you put that as your excuse and then say, well, that's it, and then it's out of my control, actually that's not true. That is not true. And I say that as somebody who's been there and who's done it, to say you can get through it, again with support, but you can get through it because the thing is, you are accountable for your actions, good and bad, and the consequences that follow those actions. You know, recently when bombings and things happen, you notice the groups come out and say, oh, we're vulnerable, we're victims, yet they're the perpetrators. Or when consequences of the actions come because of an action they did, they want the world to feel that they're the victims and hard done by, because the world will fall into that, then actually stand and say, we stand against those that caused it, or, you know, it wasn't us that did it, but we stand against the groups that did it. You never hear that. But I would say this: if you take accountability for your actions in spite of the cause, and then use it as a springboard to deal with whatever the cause is, to look at whatever, and using a modern term, triggers it, you know, then start looking at help around that, do study, but also look within yourself and ask that question. What caused this? How can I deal with it? And start taking steps to deal with it. You know, if it's compulsive texting, put your phone away. Have an accountability partner. Whatever it takes to get you through, do it. But don't ever believe that you are justified for your actions because you quote unquote go around and say, well, I'm vulnerable, I'm a victim. Because you know what? You are not. You are going from a vulnerable, a quote unquote vulnerable person, victim, to being a perpetrator and being a troublemaker. Sorry, it's true. Now again, this can be part of a defense mechanism that's learnt, but ultimately, if you don't want to be the person that if you don't want to be the person that did the harm to you, then be the person that brings the change to help others and to get the help yourself to change. Because the fact of the matter is, when you're accountable for your actions, you give an option to learn, to change, to grow, and you can use it as a basis to be a victor and live in freedom, which is what we should do, and to be an inspiration that brings changes to many others just by the way you live your life and how you are and how you grow. So stop living as a victim, stop living as a vulnerable individual, or stop making that excuse, should I say, and start pushing towards dealing with stuff and learning how to become aware, but also learning how to grow, how to heal, and how to be a person of victory, a person of healing, and a person that loves, is kind, is humble, than is prideful, arrogant, and turns from being a victim to a perpetrator in their actions and condoning it, much as perpetrators do. Anyway, all right, take care.